Kira sat in the corner of her small prison cell, watching the last buyers walk away from the space station's trading floor. Her body hurt from sitting in the same position for hours, but she had learned not to move too much. Movement meant attention, and attention usually meant trouble. The alien trader running the auction looked angry. His four arms waved around as he counted his profits for the day. Almost everyone had been sold. The strong fighters went to the mining companies. The smart ones who could fix machines went to the big corporations. The pretty ones went to entertainment, places where they would dance and perform, but Kira was still there. She touched the strange marks on her pale skin. These marks showed that her parents came from two different alien races that were never supposed to have children together. Most beings in the galaxy thought she was broken because of this. Her eyes were different colors too. One blue and one green. Everyone said this made her worthless. The trader had tried 3 times to sell her today. Each time, the buyers just shook their heads and walked away. Some even laughed. Kira had stopped feeling hurt about it. After being trapped for so many months, she barely felt anything anymore. The lights in the trading area started getting dimmer. Another day was ending, and she would spend another night in the holding area. She had been counting the days since. Her home planet was attacked. It had been over 500 days now. Sometimes she wondered if anyone even remembered her planet existed. The other cells around her were empty now. The guards had taken everyone else to their new owners. Soon, they would come for her too, but only to move her back to the regular prison area. Tomorrow there would be another auction, and maybe someone would finally want her. Or maybe not. Kira closed her eyes and tried to remember what her home looked like. The purple grass that grew near her house. The 2 suns that made everything glow golden in the evening. The sound of her mother singing while she cooked dinner. These memories were getting harder to hold on to. The station became quiet, except for the humming sound of the machines that kept everyone breathing. Far away, she could hear other traders closing their shops for the day. Everything seemed normal, like any other disappointing day. Then she heard something different. Footsteps were coming toward her cell, but they sounded strange. Not like the heavy boots the guards wore. Not like the clicking sounds most aliens made when they walked. These footsteps were soft and somehow gentle. Someone was making a musical sound, too. Not talking or communicating in any language she knew. Just a soft, pleasant melody that seemed to float through the air. Kira had never heard anything like it before. It made something warm stir in her chest, something she thought had died long ago. The footsteps got closer. Kira opened her eyes and looked toward the entrance of the cell area. She could see a shadow moving in the hallway, but whoever it was hadn't come into view yet. The musical sound continued, and now she could tell it was coming from the same person making the footsteps. Her heart started beating faster. Not from fear this time, but from something else. Something that felt almost like hope. She had almost forgotten what that felt like. The shadow moved closer, and finally the person stepped into the light where she could see them. Kira stared in complete surprise. The being standing in front of her cell looked unlike anything she had ever seen in all the alien databases she had studied during her captivity. It walked on 2 legs like she did, but was shorter and had a more solid build. Its skin was a light color, almost like hers, but different. The strangest thing was the soft-looking hair that only grew on the top of its head. But what really shocked her were its eyes. Every creature she had met in the past 500 days had eyes that showed hunger, greed, or cruelty. Predator eyes that looked at her like she was just a thing to be used. But this being's eyes were completely different. They were kind, actually kind. The creature looked right at her and spoke in a voice that was warm and gentle. "Hello there. I'm David. What's your name?" Kira's mind went blank. The question was so simple, but she couldn't process it. When was the last time someone had asked her name? She tried to remember and realized it might have been before she was captured. For so long, she had just been prisoner 847, cell block 7, defective product. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She had forgotten how to introduce herself. The being called David seemed to understand her confusion. He didn't look impatient or annoyed like everyone else always did. Instead, he crouched down so his eyes were level with hers, but he kept his distance from the energy bars of her cell. This surprised her. Most people either ignored her completely or got too close, trying to intimidate her. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to," David said softly. "I just thought, well, everyone should have someone call them by their real name." Before Kira could even think of how to respond, the alien trader slithered over on his many legs. All 4 of his arms started waving around in that dismissive way she knew so well. "Human," the trader said, his voice full of disgust. "This specimen has genetic flaws. The DNA mixing makes it useless for work, for breeding programs, or even for display purposes. Perhaps you would be interested in looking at our premium stock instead. We have some excellent warriors from the Outer Rim that would be much better, suited for your needs." But the human called David never looked away from Kira. His eyes stayed focused on hers, and when he spoke, his voice was firm and clear. "I'll take her." The trader's multiple eyes blinked in confusion. "But surely you want to run medical scans first? Check compatibility ratings? Review the inspection reports? This specimen has been rejected by dozens of qualified buyers. There must be something wrong with your translation device if you think—" "I'll take her," David repeated, finally standing up but keeping his voice calm and steady. "Full asking price, no negotiations needed." Kira watched in amazement as this human pulled out some kind of payment device. The trader kept trying to talk him out of it, listing all the reasons why she was worthless, but David ignored every word. Within minutes, credits were transferred and documents were signed. As the transaction finished, Kira stared at this strange being who had just changed her entire life with 3 simple words. She didn't understand what was happening or why it was happening. But for the first time in over 500 days, she felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. Kira couldn't stop staring at the human as he led her through the space station's corridors. Everything about him seemed impossible. The way he walked without looking over his shoulder for threats. The way he hummed that strange, peaceful melody. The way he had actually paid money to free her when everyone else saw her as worthless. "Are you hungry?" David asked as they approached what looked like a docking bay. "We've got about an hour before my ship is ready to leave, and the food here isn't terrible." Kira blinked in confusion. No one had asked if she was hungry in... She couldn't remember how long. Food was something that appeared at scheduled times, not something she got to choose. She nodded slowly, not trusting her voice yet. David smiled, and Kira noticed that his teeth were flat and white, not sharp like the predators she was used to seeing. "Great. I know a quiet place where we can talk." The small restaurant David chose was in a section of the station Kira had never seen before. Instead of the harsh lighting and metal walls of the prison areas, this place had soft lights and comfortable seats. Real plants grew in containers along the walls, and the air smelled like growing things instead of disinfectant. "2 meals, please," David told the server, a friendly alien with blue skin and kind eyes. "And maybe some of that fruit juice you had yesterday? It was really good." The server smiled back. "Of course, coming right up." Kira watched this interaction with growing amazement. David was talking to the alien like they were friends, like equals. She had never seen a human before, but even she could tell that David was smaller and probably weaker than most of the other species on the station. Yet he showed no fear, no attempt to prove himself. He just acted normal. When their food arrived, Kira stared at the plate in front of her. It was more food than she usually got in 3 days, and it actually looked and smelled good. She glanced at David, waiting for permission to eat. Go ahead, he said gently. It's yours. Kira took a small bite, then another. The food was warm and had flavors she had almost forgotten existed. As she ate, David talked quietly, not asking her questions that would force her to speak, just sharing simple information about himself. I'm from a planet called Earth, he said. It's pretty far from here, in what most people call the frontier regions. My job is, well, it's complicated, but basically I help people who need help. After they finished eating, David led her to his ship. Kira had expected something like the transport vessels she had been moved in before. Cramped spaces with locked doors and barely enough air to breathe. But David's ship was completely different. This is your room, he said, opening a door to reveal a small but clean space. There was an actual bed with soft blankets, a window that looked out into space, and a door that led to what David called a personal bathroom. Kira stepped inside and immediately went to check if the door locked from the outside. It didn't. Instead, there was only a lock on the inside, to keep others out, not to keep her in. You're free to go anywhere on the ship, David explained, showing her the common areas. The kitchen has food available all the time. Help yourself to whatever you want, whenever you want it. The observation deck has a great view of the stars, and there's a library with books and entertainment from dozens of different worlds. Why? Kira finally managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. David paused in his explanation and looked at her with those impossibly kind eyes. Why what? Why did you buy me? The words felt strange coming out of her mouth. David was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was very serious. I didn't buy you, Kira. I paid your price to get you away from that place. There's a big difference. I don't understand. Where I come from, we believe that no person should ever be owned by another person. What happened to you? What's happening in those markets? It's wrong. And when something is wrong, good people should try to fix it. Over the next 3 days, as they traveled through space, Kira began to understand what David meant. She learned that humans had only recently developed the technology to travel between stars. Most of the older alien civilizations thought humans were primitive and weak. They mostly ignored Earth and its people. That ignorance is actually helpful, David explained one evening as they sat in the observation deck, watching stars streak by outside the window. While they're busy fighting each other and arguing about territory, we've been quietly doing something different. What kind of something? David smiled, but this time his smile had an edge to it. We've been buying people, not to own them, but to free them. There are humans scattered across dozens of markets, paying the prices and bringing people to safety. We call it the Underground Railroad, after something from our history. But why do you care about us? We're not your people. That's where you're wrong, David said firmly. Anyone who needs help is our people. My species learned a long time ago what it feels like to be treated as less than others. We know what it's like when powerful people decide your life doesn't matter. Kira thought about this. But humans seem so peaceful. How do you fight back? Who says we're fighting? David's smile got wider. We're not fighting anyone. We're just shopping, buying things that are for sale. It's perfectly legal according to galactic law. And then we give people choices. Some want to go home if they still have homes to go to. Some want to start completely new lives. David looked at her meaningfully. Some decide they want to help us free others. Is that what you want me to do? I want you to do whatever makes you happy, David said. But I will tell you this. You're not broken, Kira. You're not defective or worthless or any of the other things those traitors said about you. You're just different. And sometimes being different is exactly what the galaxy needs. As Kira lay in her comfortable bed that night, listening to the gentle hum of the ship's engines, she thought about David's words. For the first time in over 500 days, she wasn't planning how to survive tomorrow. Instead, She was wondering what she might want to do with the rest of her life. Outside her window, the stars looked brighter than she remembered. On the fourth day of their journey, David asked Kira to join him on the ship's bridge. She had been spending most of her time in her room, still not quite believing that she could really go anywhere she wanted. The idea of freedom was harder to accept than she had expected. "I want to show you something," David said, settling into the pilot's chair. "We're about to enter human space." Kira looked out at the stars ahead of them. They looked the same as all the other stars she had seen. "What makes it human space?" "Well, officially nothing," David said with a small laugh. "The galactic government doesn't recognize our territorial claims. They think we're too new and too primitive to deserve our own systems. But that works in our favor." David pressed a few buttons on his control panel, and suddenly the empty space ahead of them lit up with dozens of signals. Ships of all different sizes and designs were moving between planets that Kira hadn't even noticed before. "How many ships are out there?" she asked, amazed. "More than anyone realizes," David replied. "See, the galaxy's major powers have been so busy fighting each other and looking down on us that they never bothered to count how many humans there actually are. They think we're just a few scattered colonies trying to survive." As their ship moved deeper into the system, Kira began to see the truth. This wasn't a few struggling colonies. This was an entire civilization that had been hiding in plain sight. Space stations orbited every planet, connected by streams of traffic that never seemed to stop. "But how is this possible?" Kira asked. "If you have all this, why doesn't everyone know about it?" David smiled that mysterious smile she was getting used to. "Because we let them think what they want to think. When alien diplomats visit our official colonies, we show them exactly what they expect to see. Small farming communities, basic mining operations, simple people who just want to be left alone. And they believe it?" "People see what they want to see," David said. "The big galactic powers want to believe humans are weak and insignificant, so that's what we show them. Meanwhile, the real work happens in places they never think to look. Their destination was a planet called New Haven. From space, it looked ordinary, just another frontier world with basic settlements and standard agricultural areas. But as their ship descended through the atmosphere, Kira saw something that made her heart stop. Cities, massive, beautiful cities that stretched across entire continents. But these weren't like any cities she had ever seen before. The architecture was a mix of styles from hundreds of different worlds. Buildings that looked like they came from her home planet stood next to structures she recognized from Zelthari design, next to towers that must have been built by the crystalline Nethys people. "Welcome to New Haven," David said as they landed, at a spaceport that was busy with activity. "Population, about 40 million and growing every day." 40 million? Kira whispered. "But the official galactic census says this planet has less than 100,000 inhabitants. The official census only counts the people living in the settlements we let them see," David explained. "They've never bothered to scan the rest of the planet." As they walked through the spaceport, Kira felt like she was in a dream. Everywhere she looked, she saw beings that she thought were extinct, enslaved, or scattered across the galaxy. Children of mixed heritage like herself ran and played together without any shame or hiding. Species that were supposed to hate each other were working side by side, talking and laughing like old friends. "How long has this been here?" she asked. "We started building it about 50 years ago," David said. "Back then, it was just a few humans who had managed to buy freedom for some enslaved beings. But word spread quietly, person to person, planet to planet. Every freed individual became part of the network. Every rescued child grew up knowing that there was a place where they belonged." They took a transport through the city, and Kira pressed, her face to the window like a child. Markets sold goods from 1,000 different worlds. Parks were filled with plants and animals from dozens of different planets, all somehow living together in harmony. Art and music from every culture she had ever heard of mixed together in the streets. But the resources, Kira said, trying to understand. The food, the space, the materials to build all this. How do you support 40 million people? David pointed to a massive orbital structure that was visible even from the planet's surface. See that? It's a manufacturing station. We build some of the best technology in the galaxy up there. The alien governments buy our products without even realizing they're made by humans and freed individuals working together. They buy from you? Oh, yes, David laughed. Human engineering combined with the knowledge and skills of people from every corner of the galaxy. We make things that no single species could create alone. The irony is that half the weapons the galactic military uses to maintain order were actually built by the people they're trying to control. Their transport stopped at a medical center, where David introduced Kira to Dr. Rachel Chen, the facility's chief physician. Dr. Chen was a small human woman with gentle hands and a warm smile. "Let's take a look at you," Dr. Chen said, leading Kira to an examination room that was more comfortable than anywhere she had ever been treated before. But instead of the painful tests and dismissive comments Kira was used to, Dr. Chen's examination was thorough and respectful. She asked permission before each procedure, explained what she was doing, and treated Kira like her comfort actually mattered. "Your genetic structure is fascinating," Dr. Chen said as she reviewed the results. "The combination of traits from your parent species has created some remarkable advantages." Advantages? Kira couldn't hide her surprise. "Oh, yes. Your dual heritage gives you enhanced pattern recognition abilities, resistance to most common toxins, and a cellular repair rate that's honestly impressive. You're not broken, dear. You're evolved." That evening, David took Kira to a viewing area that overlooked the main city. The lights spread out below them like stars that had fallen to Earth. "Tomorrow, I'll show you our schools, our research facilities, our training centers," David said. "But tonight, I want you to understand something important. Everything you see here exists because people like you decided to fight back. Not with weapons or violence, but by refusing to believe that their lives didn't matter." Kira looked out at the city full of free people and felt something she had never experienced before. Not just hope, but belonging. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the only one. She wasn't alone. "What happens now?" she asked. David smiled. "Now you get to choose. What do you want your life to be?" 6 months had passed since Kira first stepped foot on New Haven, and she still woke up every morning amazed that this was her life now. She had her own apartment in the residential district, overlooking a park where children from dozens of different species played together. She had friends, real friends who chose to spend time with her because they enjoyed her company, not because they needed something from her. But most importantly, she had a job that made her feel useful. "Good morning, Kira," called out Thomas as she entered the intelligence center. He was a former prisoner like herself, rescued from a mining operation 3 years ago. Now he ran the communication networks that kept the Underground Railroad connected across the galaxy. "Morning, Thomas. Any new reports overnight?" "Actually, yes. We've got some interesting information coming in from the Outer Rim. Looks like the hegemony is expanding their operations again." Kira settled at her workstation, surrounded by screens that showed data from across known space. Her unique genetic makeup had turned out to be incredibly valuable here. She could interface with technology from both sides of her heritage, reading and understanding alien computer systems that would take other analysts weeks to decode. "What am I looking at?" she asked as Thomas brought up the latest intelligence reports. 17 new trading posts have opened in the past month, Thomas explained, all of them in systems that the major governments consider too remote to monitor. The hegemony thinks they're being clever, setting up operations where no one will interfere. Kira studied the data, her enhanced pattern recognition abilities picking up details that others might miss. "They're not just expanding randomly," she said after a few minutes. "Look at these locations. They're all positioned along the major trade routes, but far enough from civilization that distress signals wouldn't reach anyone who could help. Meaning, they're not just running markets anymore. They're actively hunting. These posts are positioned to intercept refugee ships, damaged vessels, anyone who might be traveling through those areas looking for help. Thomas leaned over her shoulder to see what she was pointing at. How many people are we talking about? Kira ran some calculations, cross-referencing traffic patterns with the new post locations. If they maintain their current rate of operations, maybe 10,000 people per month. And that's just from these new locations. The number hung in the air between them like a weight. 10,000 lives every month, taken from families, from freedom, from hope. Just numbers on a screen to the traders, but Kira knew that each number represented someone like she used to be. "We need to call a council meeting," Thomas said grimly. 2 hours later, Kira found herself sitting in the colony's main council chamber, surrounded by people she had come to respect and admire. There was Captain James Rodriguez, the human military officer who coordinated rescue operations. Dr. Rachel Chen was there, representing the medical and support services. Zara, a Corvan woman who had been freed 2 years ago and now trained new arrivals, sat next to Victor, a former Talani engineer who designed the ships they used for rescue missions. At the head of the table sat Commander Lisa Park, the human woman who had founded New Haven and now led the entire Underground Railroad network. "Show them what you found," Commander Park said to Kira. Kira stood up, still sometimes amazed that her opinion mattered in a room full of such important people. 6 months ago, she had been afraid to speak at all. Now she was briefing the leaders of a galactic resistance movement. "The hegemony is changing tactics," she began, activating the holographic display in the center of the table. "Instead of waiting for people to be captured and brought to market, they're setting up hunting stations along major travel routes." She walked them through her analysis, showing how the new posts were positioned and what their purpose appeared to be. As she talked, she watched the faces around the table grow more serious. "This isn't sustainable," Dr. Chen said when Kira finished. "We've been buying people one at a time, but if they're going to start operating on this scale, we'll never." "Keep up," Captain Rodriguez agreed. "We'd need to multiply our current operations by 50 just to break even." "Which is exactly what they're counting on," Commander Park said quietly. "They know we're out here now. Maybe they don't know the full extent of our operations, but they know someone is systematically buying prisoners and setting them free. This is their response." Victor, the Talani engineer, leaned forward. "What if we changed our approach? Instead of buying people after they've been captured, what if we prevented the captures from happening in the first place?" "How?" Zara asked. "Escort services," Victor said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "We position our ships along those same trade routes. When vessels send distress signals, we respond first, offer repairs, supplies, safe passage to secure systems." "That would require a lot more ships than we currently have," Captain Rodriguez pointed out. "Not necessarily," Kira said, an idea forming in her mind. "What if we didn't need our own ships for everything?" Everyone looked at her expectantly. "The galaxy is full of independent traders, cargo haulers, passenger services," she continued. "Most of them are decent people just trying to make a living. What if we offered them contracts, payment for reporting distress signals, for providing assistance, for helping ships avoid dangerous areas?" Commander Park smiled, and Kira could see the wheels turning in her mind. "A network of civilian contractors. People who are already traveling those routes anyway." "Exactly. We wouldn't be asking them to fight or take risks, just to be good neighbors and get paid for it." "It could work," Thomas said, excitement building in his voice. "We've got the credits from our manufacturing operations. We could afford to pay competitive rates for assistance services." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "And it would spread awareness. Every contractor we work with learns that there are people out here who care, who are willing to help. That message travels. Plus," Zara added with a grin, "it puts the hegemony in an impossible position. They can't attack civilian contractors without revealing their true intentions." Right now they hide behind the pretense of legal commerce. But if they start shooting at repair ships and good Samaritans, the major governments would have to respond. Captain Rodriguez finished. Even they can't ignore attacks on legitimate civilian traffic. Commander Park stood up, her expression determined. Then we're agreed. We expand the operation, but we do it smart. Kira, I want you to work with Victor on identifying the best candidates for contracts. Thomas, start reaching out to our contacts in the independent trader associations. Dr. Chen, prepare additional medical facilities. If this works, we're going to have a lot more people coming through here. As the meeting broke up, Commander Park approached Kira privately. You've come a long way from that frightened girl David brought here 6 months ago, she said. Kira smiled, thinking about how different her life had become. I had good teachers. You had something inside you that was always strong, Commander Park corrected. We just gave you a safe place to let it show. Are you ready for the next step? What do you mean? Commander Park's expression grew serious. This new plan of yours, it's going to work, but it's also going to make us more visible to our enemies. They're going to start looking for us more seriously. When they do, we're going to need people who can handle the pressure, who can make difficult decisions under stress. Kira understood what she was being offered. Leadership, real responsibility in the fight to free others like herself. I'm ready, she said without hesitation. Outside the council chamber windows, the lights of New Haven twinkled like stars. Somewhere, out there in the darkness of space, people were trapped, hopeless, waiting for someone to care enough to help them. Kira was no longer waiting to be rescued. Now she was part of the rescue. 1 year after Kira first arrived on New Haven, she stood in the main command center watching dozens of screens that showed star maps, ship movements, and communication channels from across the galaxy. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Underground. Railroad's Intelligence Division and the small silver pin on her collar marked her as a senior analyst. The past 6 months had changed everything. Status report, Commander Park said as she entered the command center, followed by the other senior. Staff! All teams are in position, Captain Rodriguez reported. We have 47 ships ready for the operation, plus another 130 civilian contractors standing by to provide support. Kira looked up from her workstation. Intelligence confirms that the Nexus station market is operating at full capacity today. Estimated 3,000 prisoners currently being held there. Dr. Chen shook her head sadly. 3,000 people in cages waiting to be sold like property. Not for much longer, Victor said grimly, checking his engineering displays. Our new ships are equipped with the latest technology. Fast, quiet, and powerful enough to handle whatever security the station might have. The plan they had developed was ambitious beyond anything the Underground Railroad had ever attempted. Instead of quietly buying individual prisoners, one at a time, they were going to shut down the largest trading market in known space permanently. Remember, Commander Park addressed the room, this isn't just about freeing the people at Nexus Station, though that's important enough. This is about sending a message to every trader, every buyer, every government that profits from human misery. We're telling them that their business is no longer safe. Kira turned back to her screens, monitoring communications across multiple star systems. Over the past year, their network had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The civilian contractor program had been a massive success. Thousands of independent traders, cargo haulers, and passenger ships had signed up to help. Some did it for the money, but many did it because they believed it was the right thing to do. Incoming transmission from Team 7, announced Thomas from his communication station. They're reporting successful intercept of a hegemony patrol near the Altair system. No shots fired. The patrol withdrew when they realized they were outnumbered. That's the 4th patrol this week that's backed down instead of fighting, Captain Rodriguez noted with satisfaction. Word is getting out that we're not the easy targets they thought we were. The beauty of their expanded operation was its simplicity. By recruiting civilian contractors, they had essentially created a galaxy-wide early warning system. Distress calls were answered within hours instead of days. Ships in trouble received help before the hegemony hunters could reach them. Refugees found safe passage to human space instead of ending up in auction houses. "Ma'am," called out Zara from her station, "we're getting reports from our contacts in the galactic government. The hegemony has been requesting military support for their operations, claiming they're under attack by pirates." Commander Park smiled coldly. "Let me guess. The military told them to handle their own security problems." "Yes, ma'am." Apparently, the official response was that if the hegemony can't protect their legal business operations, maybe they should consider a different line of work. The command center erupted in quiet laughter. It was a small victory, but an important one. The major galactic powers were starting to distance themselves from the slave trade, not because they suddenly developed morals, but because it was becoming too much trouble to support. "All right, people," Commander Park called the room to attention. "Final systems check. This is the big one." Kira pulled up the tactical display showing the Nexus station and surrounding space. The massive trading station hung in orbit around a dead planet surrounded by the usual collection of buyer ships, transport vessels, and security patrols. "Target analysis complete," she reported. "Station defenses are standard commercial grade, designed to handle small-scale piracy, not a coordinated assault. We should be able to disable their shields and weapons within the first few minutes." Civilian. "Evacuation routes are mapped and clear," Victor added. "We've identified 17 different ways to get non-combatants off the station safely. Medical teams are standing by at 3 different locations," Dr. Chen reported. "We're prepared to handle up to 5,000 rescued individuals. Commander." Park nodded to Captain Rodriguez. "Give the order. All teams, this is command. Operation Liberation is a go. Repeat, Operation Liberation is a go." On the screens around the room, Kira watched as dozens of ships dropped out of hyperspace around Nexus Station. Not the crude pirate vessels the station's security was expecting, but sleek modern ships with advanced shields and precision weapons. The underground railroad fleet moved with military precision, surrounding the station and disabling its defenses, before the traders inside even realized what was happening. Within 10 minutes, the station's shields were down, its weapons were offline, and its communication array was under human control. "This is Commander Park of the Human Liberation Fleet." Her voice echoed through the station's communication system. "You are engaged in illegal activities against sentient beings. You will immediately release all prisoners and prepare to be boarded." The response came quickly from the station's administrator. "Human Fleet, you are interfering with legal commerce, protected under galactic trade law. Withdraw immediately or face military retaliation." "What military?" Captain Rodriguez asked dryly, gesturing to the tactical display. "Your patrol ships just jumped to hyperspace rather than fight us. Your government contracts just told you to handle your own problems. Face it, you're alone out here." Kira watched as the first rescue teams boarded the station. The plan was simple, but effective. Secure the prison areas first, evacuate the prisoners to safety, then systematically shut down the station's operations. "First batch of prisoners is secure," came the report from Team 3. "We've got about 400 people in the primary holding area. Medical teams are providing initial care now. Team 7 reporting successful breach of the secondary prison block. Another 600 prisoners secured." The reports kept coming in as the operation unfolded exactly as planned. The station's security forces, faced with overwhelming odds and no backup, surrendered without significant resistance. The traders and buyers, suddenly realizing that their profitable business had become a death trap, evacuated as quickly as possible. "Ma'am," Thomas called out, "we're receiving surrender communications from 17 other trading stations across the sector. They're asking for terms." Commander Park exchanged glances with her senior staff. "What kind of terms?" "They want to know if we'll let them shut down voluntarily instead of being attacked." "Tell them," Commander Park said slowly. that any station that releases all prisoners immediately and ceases operations will be left alone. Any station that continues to operate will be visited by our fleet. Within 6 hours, it was over. Nexus Station was empty of prisoners, its facilities dismantled, and its administration fled to wherever slave traders go when their business falls apart. More importantly, the psychological impact was enormous. If the Underground Railroad could take down the biggest trading station in known space, no operation was safe. Final count, Dr. Chen reported as the last rescue ships departed. 3,247 individuals freed from Nexus Station alone. Another 8,000 from the stations that surrendered rather than fight. Kira looked around the command center at the people who had become her family. A year ago, she had been a frightened prisoner in a cage, convinced that she was worthless and broken. Now she was part of something that was changing the galaxy. "What's next?" she asked Commander Park. "Now we get back to work," the commander replied. "There are still millions of people out there who need our help. This was just the beginning," as the fleet jumped back to hyperspace, carrying thousands of freed individuals to safety. Kira thought about a question David had asked her that first day on his ship. "What do you want your life to be?" Now she knew the answer. She wanted her life to be proof that no one was worthless, that everyone deserved freedom, and that sometimes the galaxy's greatest strength came from the people it tried hardest to forget. The auction was over. Every cage was empty. And across the galaxy, humans were whispering those same life-changing words to other frightened prisoners. "I'll take you. You're coming home with us."